Good morning. Welcome to Village in Motion. Today is Monday, August 20th, 2018, and we're here today with two guests. We have resident Marie Lee, who is chair of our hearing support group, and she has brought a guest with her. Would you like to introduce her?
Yes, certainly. This is Dr. Gina Crovato. Dr. Crovato is Green Springs audiologist, and she has been coming to Green Spring for about 13 to 14 years.
And so not a stranger to any of us.
I certainly don't aim to be.
I don't think so. And both of you are here to talk about something new here at Green Spring, which is something we can't see, we can't touch, but it is something wonderful. Which one of you would like to tell us what it is?
Well, there's a new hearing loop system that has been installed in a couple of the rooms here. With help from Mrs. Lee and some other residents and the project manager, Gary Gillum, they've managed to install the hearing loop system in the Village Square Theater and in the Akatink room.
So we are now officially in the loop.
In the loop. I actually researched that to see if that's the origin.
Is that the origin
I don't think so.
of the term?
I don't think so, but I think
It
that we
sounds
should.
good.
I think that we should go with that.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
go with that. So what does having a hearing loop in the theater and in the Akatink room do for us?
Well, for residents who have hearing aids equipped with a telecoil, or for residents who have borrowed one of our receivers that has a telecoil receiver, when you go into the theater or the Akatink room and there's a speaker who has a microphone, you can access the telecoil on your hearing device, and then you'll get the sound of the person speaking into the microphone directly into your ears without having to combat background noise or the distance or a regular speaker system. So you get that speaker's voice directly into your ears, nice and crisp and clear.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. For about the last year and a half or 2 years, we've been saying that there's something called an FM receiver that looks like what Marie is holding up, and you've been telling me, oh, if I have one of these, I can hear through the microphone directly in through this.
Still
What's
wonderful.
the difference?
Still wonderful. The FM receivers are still wonderful, and these can be used, I believe, in more locations than just the theater and the Akatink room as of now.
So we have two tools that will do the same thing.
They operate similarly, yes. And if you have an FM receiver, you can continue to use it, and you don't have to learn about the telecoil system if you don't want to. It is nice to have those options if you have hearing devices that have a telecoil. Some people also have FM receivers if they don't have hearing aids yet, or if they haven't reached that point.
Right.
Certainly, they're a helpful tool in those instances as well. And certainly, it's nice to be able to use that FM receiver wherever you go.
The FM receiver will work in the Akatink room, the theater, and the chapel, and the Hunters Crossing Conference Center.
I believe
Correct.
that's correct.
That's
Whereas the telecoil will only work in the first two.
So far.
So far.
So far, okay.
Yes.
So let's back up to the telecoil
Sure.
and talk about how do I know if my hearing aid has a telecoil?
That's a great question. Speaking for myself as an audiologist to several of the residents that are here at Green Spring, I haven't always done a great job communicating to some of my patients who were fit several years ago about whether or not their hearing aids had a telecoil, because it wasn't especially relevant without the system here at Green Spring. But I would suggest that anybody who wears hearing aids, if you aren't sure if your hearing aid has a telecoil, call your audiologist and just ask, does my hearing aid have a telecoil? What do I need to do to have it activated, and learn how to use it?
The audiologist can look it up without looking at your hearing aid.
Yes, I can look it up in my system. Sometimes I've had other people ask me if their hearing aid has a telecoil, and sometimes I know off the top of my head based on the model. Sometimes
Marie,
I don't.
I think you brought with you a picture that we can show. We
Yes.
have it there. Of
We
what the
do.
telecoil looks like that we see on the screen there. It's just a teeny little coil of wire.
It is. It's just a tiny little coil that's put within a hearing aid. And of course, that's a behind the ear hearing aid, but it can go in some of the smaller hearing aids, like an inside the ear. Is that right, Gina?
Sure. Here's an example of a little in-the-ear hearing aid. It's pretty tiny, but this one has a little push button on it where you can activate the telecoil inside. If you have a hearing aid that's several years old, like this, or like that behind the ear one, there's not a way of installing a telecoil after the fact, but there may be one that's already installed that can be activated.
So the key is that number one, you find out, does my hearing aid have a telecoil? And number two, how do I turn it on? Because it's not something that stays on all the time.
Correct, and you wouldn't want it to. The way the telecoil works and the way that little brass coil worked inside that hearing aid is it picks up electromagnetic energy. And we have electromagnetic energy that appears in a lot of ways. Fluorescent lights or computer monitors, your refrigerator makes that little buzzing sound. And then this loop that we have that goes around the floor in the theater and around the ceiling in the Akatink room puts off electromagnetic energy from the speaker's microphone. So we don't want that on all the time because you'd wind up hearing a buzzing sound a lot of the time. And you're not always in the theater or the Akatink room within that loop. So most of the time you would want your hearing aid to be on a regular setting. But when you do want the telecoil to be on, you can push the button on the side of the hearing aid like that.
And your audiologist would need to tell you how to do it on your hearing aid, because every hearing aid is different.
Correct.
Yes.
Some people might not have great dexterity, and so they might say, gee, that button's a little too small. And in those instances, there are remote controls that we can sometimes use, and some more current hearing devices can actually be controlled by an app on your smartphone if you have one. So we do our best to try to make it as easy to control as possible, but you do have to manually switch into the telecoil program and then manually switch out afterward.
I did read that there are some, and I think very, very new technology that will automatically switch when it detects in a room that there is a telecoil there.
So in my experience, those automatic telecoils work best for telephone use. When you pick up the phone, it clicks in, and then when you put the phone down, it clicks off again. For most people, clicking into a telecoil into the theater or the Akatink room wouldn't always be desirable because you wouldn't always want to use the telecoil.
Right.
But those automatic telecoils are available. They just work best with phones.
But it's important to know that just being in one of those two venues doesn't, someone standing on the stage just talking and not using a microphone doesn't mean that your telecoil is going to help.
Correct.
They're going to have to be using one of the microphones that is hooked to the sound system of that room.
Correct. It's important for both people who are the speakers to know that and for the people that are in the audience to know that.
And that also means that when there is a program, like a music program or a movie, that you can use your telecoil or your T-coil. We've been calling it a T-coil. You can access your T-coil for a movie or for a program, a music program, so long as the sound is going through the sound system. So it's not just when somebody is holding a microphone or is wearing a microphone.
So if it's going through the sound system of the theater,
yes,
or the Akatink room, period.
Yes. I think we have a visual of what it looks like in a group setting with the loop. It's a very simple graphic, and I don't know if they can put that up, then we can show what the T-coil actually, what the loop looks like in the room.
It's really quite
we have
simple.
A visual about that. It's very simple. It's essentially a wire loop around a room, and it connects to an amplifier. So that's essentially what that is.
Oh, I think we have the graphic up now that shows that.
Literally in the loop.
Right,
Yes.
in the loop, yes, right. But can make a huge difference. Now, as far as controlling volume as we would on an FM receiver, there's no controlling the volume.
If you have a volume control on your hearing device, you can adjust the volume for the telecoil. If you find that the telecoil volume is routinely not desirable for you, your audiologist can adjust the telecoil program in the hearing aid itself. Or if you have one of these,
Like a remote, you can, on my remote, I can reduce the volume.
Because you have a cochlear implant.
Yes.
And on your cochlear implant, you also turn on the telecoil.
T-coil, right.
Okay.
I can turn it on with this remote, and I think we have a visual of that with the telecoil turned on.
Okay.
And I can adjust the volume also
Okay.
with that. Also, I can reach back and push the button until I hear a little melody of sounds, which says to me that that means the T-coil is on.
So one of the biggest challenges of this is just learning how to do it on your hearing aid. And asking your neighbor, well, how do I do this? Is probably not the best idea because your hearing aid and that person's hearing aid are probably very different.
It's very important when someone goes to the audiologist to have the T-coil activated that they spend enough time with the audiologist learning how to turn it on and off. Because just having the audiologist say, okay, I've activated it, and handing you back your hearing aid, and then you come to the theater and you don't have a clue
Right.
how to turn it on. That's not going to work.
And
So
if it
you
were
need
me-
to practice.
If it were me, I would want to practice it in the audiologist's
That's
office
correct.
and then come home and practice it 3 or 4 times every day
Yes.
until I really felt comfortable with
Yes.
it. Because you think you know how to do it, and then you don't do it for a while, and then it's, oh gosh,
Right.
how do I do this?
it's tough because in the audiologist's office, when we click into the telecoil program, you won't hear because we're not in the theater.
Right.
We're not in the
You
academic
don't know what you're hearing.
So we have to teach you, as the provider, we have to say, here's what you can expect to hear, and there's usually an audible signal. If you have an app for your smartphone, the wonderful thing about that is sometimes we can have it so that you can see, here's where we might adjust the programs, where it can be from an automatic program to the telecoil program and back and forth. This would also be a good place to adjust volume as well if you have a smartphone app that's capable of that. The remote control, those are nice visual things that you can easily see. It's hard to see when you're manipulating something behind your ear, but there's at least an audible signal also that lets you know you've clicked into the telecoil program. So your provider should sit with you and go through the motions and find out what's going to work best for you.
Now, if I'm in the market to buy a hearing aid, how much extra does having a T-coil in my hearing aid cost?
Good question. The extra cost, if any, is going to be minimal. Most behind-the-ear hearing aids that have a telecoil option equipped, there's no extra cost. It just is built into the body of the hearing aid. For a custom instrument, a small one like this that fits inside the ear, sometimes there's an extra cost of maybe $50 or so per instrument, but there are a lot of providers who are like me who just build that into the cost of the instrument and it doesn't cost any extra. For years I've been putting telecoils in hearing aids that are this size, and then not really addressing it a whole lot, aside from the fact to tell somebody that their hearing aid has that capability.
And it's not, I think you said before, it's not really something that can be added on later because there's not space inside most hearing aids to put it.
Which is why I just build it in the beginning, because
Right.
that little coil has to be placed just so. So when they build the instrument, they have to put it in there. If they build it without it, they don't build the space for the telecoil, that little brass coil, to go in.
Okay.
That's right. I think it's important to note that the quality of the sound with the T-coil is crystal clear. And it blocks out all of the ambient noise or the background noise. And sometimes if you are in a program and then your neighbor says something to you, you may not be able to hear what your neighbor says because the T-coil is in effect. But one nice thing about the T-coil, we have many people are sensitive about having others know that they have a hearing loss. Some are still in denial, but those who have moved forward and have gotten a hearing device and are wearing a hearing aid, it's really nice to access a T-coil by just reaching back, and it's like you're scratching your ear.
Right.
But if you're wearing something like this, you call attention to the fact that I don't hear very well anymore.
Now, what is this that you're showing us?
Oh, this is the loop receiver.
Okay.
So this is one that is borrowed right now from the Acatink room.
So this is similar to borrowing an FM receiver.
Exactly.
We also have available in the Acatink room and the theater a few of these that people can borrow
Yes.
to use to hear through the T-Coil system.
Exactly.
And how do you use those?
These don't have a channel like the FM receiver. So essentially what you do with this one is put the headphones on and turn the switch.
Now there's
And
one
it connects you.
one trick to using them.
One trick to using them is to hold it in a vertical position rather than to just put it on your lap.
You really have to remind yourself
Right.
of that.
You just need to hold it in a vertical position. There's something about the way the technology likes it to be in a vertical position.
Could someone just
So-
wear it around their neck?
Yes, you can put it around your neck,
Yep.
this loop. And these are really comfortable to wear. It's stereo sound rather than just monaural sound from the FM receiver. And those people who have used them in the last couple of weeks, we're getting good reviews.
Good.
And we're getting very good reviews from members of the hearing loss support group who tried the T-Coil last Thursday for the first time. And I didn't have anyone who said, that doesn't work well.
That was exciting.
Yes, it was
So
exciting.
we do have just a few of them available for loan when you come to an event in the
Yes.
theater or in the Acatink room.
Yes, there are 5 in each room, and you have to sign them out and return them after the show is over.
So in either of those rooms, if you don't have a hearing aid with a T-Coil, you can borrow those, or if you don't have a hearing aid at all, you could use either one of them.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, another question about T-Coils. They are not only useful here at Green Spring, they're useful other places.
Telecoil technology has been around for decades. It started in the 40s after World War II. But it's not as prevalent here in the US as it is in Europe. In Europe, it's everywhere. I took a taxi ride in London after I left the airport, and in the back of the PT Cruiser, there was the little symbol, the ear with the little T next to it.
Let's show that symbol. I think we have a graphic to show that symbol so that people would know when they're in a venue what that T-Coil symbol looks like. There we go. If you see that symbol any place, you know that you're someplace where that T-Coil is available, and potentially you'll be able to flip the switch on your hearing device and hear using that T-Coil.
Other areas where I've seen that telecoil symbol in public around here, so many of the theaters have systems in place that have telecoil technology, T-coil technology. There are some other public places. Movie theaters often have T-coil technology, or at least assistive devices. When I used to see movie listings in the newspaper, I don't know if they still put them there. Sometimes the theater listings would show which theaters had a little T-coil icon. And then more recently, Wegmans grocery store has T-coil technology that is at least in place
At the checkouts?
at certain checkouts and at the
Okay.
customer service desk.
Okay, that's
Now,
good.
in the interest of full disclosure, it doesn't seem like the whole staff knows exactly what to do with the T-coil technology, but
Okay.
it's there, you know. So we're going to start seeing this probably in more places.
So we may need to help educate them about how to use it.
Yes, I think that is a fair statement.
Okay.
Yes, I've been doing my part at my Wegmans,
Good.
which is probably why I'm persona non grata there anymore.
No, I don't think so. I think you're and probably eventually they will be happy to know.
It's when you go in and you see the sign there and you say, this is wonderful, you have this telecoil technology here, and the kid behind the counter says, what do you mean? I don't know what that is. Then that's the couple of times I've gone to a supervisor and said, probably we need to make sure the staff all knows what this is, which
And the
is
supervisor may not know yet either.
they might not know, or it's just an opportunity to point out that it's a training issue.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to have the training here
Yes.
for the staff
For some
here.
of our staff here. Now,
Right.
what is it that we will need to teach our staff here?
Well, just the same way we have to teach the residents how to use the telecoil system, so we have to teach the staff as well. And we have to teach them that just because they're on stage talking doesn't necessarily mean that if they don't have the microphone handy or if they're not talking into the sound system, that the telecoil system isn't getting used.
And I think it will be important for the staff to hopefully try to remember to say, hey, don't forget to turn on your telecoils.
That's a great point at the
Yes.
beginning of a program
Yeah.
or something, yeah.
And if I were one of them, that would be hard for me to remember.
When
But
you haven't
hopefully
done
over
it,
a period of time.
yes. We also want them to know where the seats are in the theater, you know, that the loops are around the seating areas. So if you're being a wallflower off on the wall, it's not going to work.
Oh, now that's interesting to know. That's interesting for all of us to know. That the loop is only around the seats, that if you're sitting back against the wall, you're not within the looped area.
That's right.
That's right.
That's very important.
It
But
is
in
important.
the theater, it does include the accessibility areas that are in
Okay.
the rear of the theater.
Okay.
So
That are just behind the last row of seats.
yes, yes.
But if I'm back against the back wall,
you're
I'm
out of
not
the
going
loop.
to- I'm out of the loop.
Out of
Yes.
the loop.
Okay, so that's very, very
If you're
important.
in an aisle, you're out of the loop.
Okay.
Or if you're in the very front of the theater, in front of the stage, standing in front, you're out of the loop. But if you're sitting anywhere in a seat,
As long as I'm in a seat.
as long
or
as you're in a
if
seat or you're in an EMV or a wheelchair behind the seating
in
area,
the row directly behind the seats,
Exactly.
I'm all right.
you're in
But
the
if I'm
loop.
any further back,
Yes.
then it's not going to work.
In the Acatink room, the loop is installed in the ceiling. So almost anywhere in that room, you are in the loop.
That's good to know.
Yes.
Good. And we're hoping to have it installed in other venues soon.
Yes. I mean, we haven't had any promises, but
Mm-hmm.
we've had some noises maybe that we may be getting the loop elsewhere.
Well, I think we all definitely owe our thanks to you, Marie. I know you have been the leader and the
The fly in the ointment.
no, I wouldn't say that at all. I think the leader and the initiator of, because I know I never heard of this before you came here and really got this thing going.
Well, thank you very much.
Because I'm sure it's badly needed and much appreciated.
I think when we have so many residents who have hearing loss.
Oh, yes.
And they have been very supportive of my efforts, as have the executive director, Chandra Kumar, and the staff. I mean, some of the general services staff have been very supportive of this effort. And so it's working. And
There are so many assistive aids out there for many kinds of disabilities that we can't know about all of them.
that's right.
And sometimes it just takes someone coming forward and saying, hey, here's this. It's not hugely expensive. It would help so many of us. Can we do this?
Yes. So now I think we need to spend a moment and talk about the dining rooms.
Let's do that.
So I have people who come up and say, gosh, won't it be great when they install the loop in the dining rooms?
And will that work?
What do you think, Gina?
I think we're going to have a lot of people that are disappointed when they find out that the telecoil won't work in the dining room.
And why won't it work in the dining room?
Well, just like we said, it's usually somebody who has a microphone or who is talking into a sound system. So unfortunately, the dining rooms and dining in general isn't an environment that supports that.
Right.
It doesn't, unless we all passed a microphone around the dining room table, your table for 7, which really does stunt conversation
Just
a lot.
bit.
Yeah. So it's not a situation that'll work well in the dining room, unfortunately.
So this is a matter of education.
So many things are.
Yes.
Yes, but it is definitely something that I think a lot of people will be interested and motivated to learn about.
Yes.
Yes.
I think people just need to understand that telecoil is a wonderful system, T-Coils are a wonderful system, but the dining room is not a place where it can help us.
That's correct.
No, because it has to be used with a sound system.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we may have it soon at a front desk, particularly in town center, during the repositioning, because that's a point of service place.
Yes.
And it's very easy to put a microphone with the communication specialist and have that area looped, and someone comes up, they can access the T-Coil right there and hear what the person
That
is
would
saying.
be really helpful.
Yes, those point of service counters.
Where the person could click their hearing aid, and the person could speak into a microphone right to that person,
Right.
and have them understand that there's lamb curry for dinner that evening, or
Yes.
that they're going to have to wait 15 minutes for a table.
Yes, and of course that's an area where all of that background noise will be
Yes.
gone.
Yes,
So that's
which is the
very
biggest problem
important.
in the dining rooms.
And you probably have seen people go up to the front desk and just literally scream at the person who's behind the desk, or the person behind the desk needs to really raise their voice for the person to try to understand.
Yes.
And often I've heard that, I say, well, maybe it would be better to write a note. So
Yes.
that, you know, but the T-Coil system there would be ideal.
Yes.
I was at a bookstore in Scotland 10 years ago, and I was checking out at the desk with my book, and they said if you're in the square area around the desk, and they had a different color carpet to make it noticeable, but this checkout counter has a loop around it. So just put your telecoil into the loop. Like I said, we see a lot more
So as you
telecoils in
said,
Europe.
In
yes.
Europe, I wonder
Yeah.
why. Well, it's been sold earlier and wider.
Perhaps so. I
Yeah.
don't know what it was about Europe, but I saw it a lot in the UK, where you'd go out someplace and there would be a telecoil loop system. Like we said, they're not expensive to install.
Well, hopefully we have sold it more here in Green Spring.
I hope so.
And people will, and people here are always updating their hearing aids and looking for better ways to use their hearing aids. And the best advice we can give about hearing aids is what?
Wear
You
them.
wear them. Yes. Get them out of the drawer.
That was a clue.
Wear
and
them.
Both
Yes.
of you knew the right
Absolutely.
answer. Get them out of your drawer and put them on when?
All day, every day.
All day, every day.
I want those hearing aids in people's ears when they wake up in the morning, and I want them to take them out when they're getting ready for bed. I have a lot of folks that are what I like to call social hearing aid wearers, where they only wear the hearing aids when they go to dinner or when they play cards or whatever, but your brain wants consistent hearing all the time.
I think the biggest clue for me is when somebody says, I've lost a hearing aid, and I'm thinking, okay, if you put it on first thing in the morning, then that probably wouldn't have happened.
There should be two places where your hearing aid is. It's either in your ears or in the case.
That's right, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, one last thing that either of you would like to add before we leave our listeners today?
Do we want to talk about when the training is, if people want to come?
Yes, I think we do.
So the training is going to be on
And
September.
I think they have a visual on that also.
They should, yeah.
Here we go.
On September 18th, it is for the residents and the staff to come and learn about the telecoil system and how to manage it. It's going to be at 10 o'clock in the morning in the theater, the Village Square
Okay.
Theater.
Do come and bring your hearing aids, and if you don't yet know whether you have a telecoil in your hearing aid, work with your audiologist between now and then, so you know, and you can turn yours on if you have one and be ready to learn. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
It's been a
Thank you.
wonderful education.